So today we're going to be taking a look at F-Zero GP Legend, which is based after the video game series from Nintendo called F-Zero. And well, as you know, it's a racing game, and it's actually one of my favorites. Mostly because it was very fast paced, but that's to be suspected for a racing game, and it also had some very cool car designs and even some epic music. So when I first heard about this show coming out, I was actually pretty excited for it, even though I had no idea what to suspect from its story, because F-Zero games were not really known for its story. Yes, F-Zero GX had a story, but the thing is, I haven't really played a lot of the story mode in that game, so I can't really say a whole lot about it, mostly because that game is just fucking hard. But as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty much its own thing, so I really don't think it has anything to do with the story from F-Zero GX. Also, this is the second anime that I happen to be taking a look at that is based after a video game, the first one being Final Fantasy Unlimited. So anyways, I think I went on too long here, so let's finally get to talk about the anime. So it starts with a character named Rick Wheeler, or at least that's his name in English, where his name in Japanese is Ryu Shuzaku. And as you would imagine, he is a racer. And on one day, he was end up chasing a criminal named Zoda. But while he was chasing him, they both end up getting into a major accident. So after when Rick wakes up from the hospital, he realizes that 150 years have passed. What, did he froze him like Walt Disney or something? Well, either way, whether we know it or not, it doesn't really matter. So the first thing he ends up doing is hijacking some random car and then happens to drive to a place where he was supposed to meet his girlfriend, which was prior to the accident that happened 150 years ago. So another original character named Jack Levin ends up meeting up with him, mostly because he stole the car from him. So eventually they end up wanting to race each other so who gets to win the car, but Jack ends up winning because Rick is out of shape because he hasn't raced in over 150 years. So eventually Jodie Summer and Dr. Stewart, who are originally from the game, so they end up wanting Rick to join the task force with them. So the main reason why they want him to join is so he can keep on winning races along with them, because in these F-Zero races you get prize money. But there is an evil organization called the Dark Million Organization who is being run by Black Shadow and someone else. So they're really just trying to win the races just so they don't get to win the prize money, or else bad shit would happen. So Rick is very all confused by this, but then he sees on TV that there's this purple guy and he happens to be Zoda. And how he noticed it was him was because of the same laughter. So he really wants to get his revenge on Zoda, so he ends up joining them. And now you're probably thinking, where the hell is Captain Falcon in all this? Well, he is here, actually, but he's actually taken the name as Burt Lemmings, and he runs a bar. At least that's what he does when he's not racing. And then he throws on the disguise, and well, you know, he drives the Blue Falcon. So he is always helping out the task force as well. So that gives you an idea of what this show is all about, and well, honestly, it's not good, but it's not bad either. The reason why I say this is because it actually does have some ideas that are kind of interesting. I mean, I kind of like the idea that Zoda was originally a human at first, because just from the games I always just thought he was an alien or something. And even though the idea of having Captain Falcon playing a bartender on the side, it may seem weird, but I can't imagine anything else that they could have made him to be, so I guess that works fine. But other than that, everything else just seems very generic. At least as far as shows that are based after racing go, after all. And as for the characters, well, the original characters are okay. I mean, they're not amazing, but they're not awful. But as for the characters that you might be familiar with from the game, well, some of them are actually portrayed pretty well, you know, like Captain Falcon, Zoda, Black Shadow. But I find that Jodie and Dr. Stewart are not that great. I mean, I just find they're both so overly serious for an anime that is pretty campy. So it doesn't really suit with the rest of the other characters, I find, which is very strange. Because this anime does portray itself more as goofy or campy than anything. So it really just seems off. But I wouldn't say it's the worst portrayal of a character ever, it's just something I think could have been handled better. And I think that's the whole idea with the show, is that it seems like it does have some pretty interesting ideas, but then it seems a bit generic. So it really just falls a bit flat. And for that reason, I actually found the show to be kinda boring. At least when it comes to its story, anyway. So let's start moving on to other things, like the animation, and well, it does use a lot of 3D effects, and yeah, the same thing applies here. The 3D effects just look really fucking cheap. But as for the parts that are not in 3D, well, it looks okay, but that's just it, it's just okay. Although at least the character designs actually look as good as what they're supposed to look like. Or close enough that it really doesn't matter, but really though, other than that, it's just okay, but of course the 3D effects just look pretty bad. Now as for the music in this show, well, if you're expecting music from the games, well, you're gonna be pretty disappointed because the music in here is just fucking lame. Now the music itself, like on its own, doesn't sound bad, it's just not great. But that's the thing though. Even if this was just some generic racing show that was not based after F-Zero, it would still be not that great. But it's mostly forgettable than anything. I mean, I can't even remember how any of the songs even sound like. So if it's trying to adapt music from the F-Zero games, well, it's definitely a big fail on that. And if there is a song that does sound like it, well, I don't even fucking remember it. But as for the opening though, this is actually a good thing because the opening is actually a song called The Meaning of Truth, which was done by a band called Hyro X, and all I have to say is that that song is fucking awesome. Even though I do find it funny that most people only know it as a song that plays in the background of the part where Captain Falcon gets out of his car, his helmet comes off, and he Falcon punches Black Shadow in the face, and like the entire galaxy explodes, and honestly, that's probably the only awesome part about this anime, and this song as well. So with that being said, at least the opening was actually done right. Even though it may not have that F-Zero feel to it, at least it was actually a good song. And now, as for the voice acting, as again, this one isn't that great either. Although it does have some decent moments that are worth mentioning. So you got Greg Abbey playing Rick, and he actually does a decent job as him. And then Captain Falcon is being played by David Wills, and he does a decent job, although it would have been pretty cool if they got the voice actor who did the voice of him in Super Smash Bros. That would have been pretty cool. But for what he had to do, he actually did do a pretty decent job. And then Jack is being played by Mark Thompson, and well, he's okay, not really good, but not really bad either, but you know, it's just kinda whatever. And then Jodie Summer is being played by Veronica Taylor, and I have to say, Veronica Taylor is a good voice actor, but this role is, yeah, not that great. I just find she sounds really bored with the whole thing, which is another reason why that her character portrayed here is very weird, because she's just overly serious, and, well, I guess in that regard it could make sense, but I don't know, I never really got that feel from Jodie Summer, at least from the games anyway. And then Zoda is being played by Jamie McGonigal, and he actually does do a pretty decent job. I mean, he knows how to act fucking crazy, so at least that's a good thing. And then Dr. Stewart is being played by Dan Green, and well, Dan Green is actually pretty good, but the thing is, in this role, it's kinda eh. Meaning that it's not really good, but it's not really bad either. It's probably one of the worst roles I ever heard him in. And then Dr. Clash is being played by Maddie Bustine, and she actually does a good job as him, and yes, this is the same person that played Yugi's grandfather in Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, she ends up playing a Russian old guy. It's actually pretty funny. And finally, I'll mention is Black Shadow being played by Eric Stewart, and as again, he's also a good voice actor, but in here, he's just kinda okay. So yeah, a lot of the voice work in this show is kind of all over the place, but it never is anything amazing, but of course, it's not the worst thing I ever heard. It's definitely not nearly as bad as the voice acting within Card Captors or in Final Fantasy Unlimited, that's for sure. Now, as for the overall score, I'm gonna have to give this one a 4 out of 10. So when you end up wanting to make a game into an anime, but you have to take a game that is not really known for its story, it could go either way. I mean, it could be really good, or it can be really bad. And in this case, it's more on the not so good side, but it's not terrible, or it's not like the biggest like piece of turd I ever seen. I just mostly found the show to be boring, and it really was not keeping my interest whatsoever, although I will have to say it was definitely a lot better than Final Fantasy Unlimited, that's for sure. But that's not saying a lot, because I just found the show was just not very good. I mean, you have a show about racing, but yet I just found that a lot of the racing in it was just not that exciting. Fuck, even Speed Racer is better than this shit. And that show was corny as fuck. But of course, if you've seen my review for Speed Racer, I actually did give it a pretty good review, mostly because of the time that it came out, and it was actually fairly impressive on that too. And it was really funny, but here, it was just not that funny at all. So if we're going to be comparing this with the quality of the games, yeah, this is definitely a far cry. And there's no pun intended, because I know I said far cry. But anyways, as bad as the things are that I'm saying, it could have been way worse than what we got. And like I said, it's not the worst anime I've ever seen, far from it, and it's far from the worst anime adaptation of a video game. Now, if there's any last things I have to say is that I'm not hating on this anime because they made a whole bunch of changes to a game series that I so dearly love. Because even if this show had nothing to do with F-Zero, like let's just say they replaced like Captain Falcon with just some random other guy or whatever, my thoughts on this would probably be the same. Well, maybe not exactly like it because, you know, this is something that's actually basing after a game, or if something like this was actually its own thing, it would be kind of different, but for the most part, it would still be boring as fuck. Anyways, I've just figured I'd say that because I know this show does have a small cult following, and hey, that's totally fine. If you like this show, I ain't got a problem with that, but I don't think I need to mention that every single time I'm talking about an anime I don't like. And yes, they did make a spin-off game that was based after this show on the Game Boy Advance with the same name, and all I have to say is that at least the game was good, so at least if something good came out of this, at least we did get a pretty decent Game Boy Advance game. Oh, and that Falcon punch scene, that was also pretty damn epic as well, but other than that, I just didn't care for this one.